Yeah. All right, family. What's up? You already know it's Jay Dizzle, Liberation Minded Media in the building. And today we're going to have a discussion with Brother Haru. Matter of fact, his YouTube channel is in the description. So make sure you give him a sub, pull up, see what he's talking about. So basically, brother, like I said, hey, I appreciate you coming through. You left a message on or response on one of my videos, and we kind of had some dialogue back and forth, and decided that we would just have a discussion, which is a lot of people troll on the internet, right?
Right.
Clout chasing is just what all YouTubers do to some degree. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're trying to get our views up, we're trying to get our perspective out. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I do appreciate and respect when someone can stand behind their words, or at least have a back and forth dialogue, because it's one thing to be able to clickety clack, you know what I'm saying? And it's another to be able to respond in real time, which I think really edifies the people. So tell the people like who you are. Go ahead and promote your YouTube channel, what you about.
Yeah, hey, Ruhanis is the name. Some people may be familiar with me. Obviously, my YouTube channel was taken down by YouTube, so I had about 7,000 subs at the time. Was taking the initiative to grow as much as we possibly could. We're part of the FOF squad, obviously Facts Over Feelings. I know a lot of people have probably used that, but we pride ourselves on making sure that we vet everything that we give to the people, and so that people can make a conscious decision, an intelligent decision, and based on all of the information available. I am the author of a book called The Untold Story of the Carbon Baby, which is on Amazon, and it's also in the libraries here. We conduct reading programs. I'm part of the Black Fatherhood Network here in my city too as well. And like the brother was talking about, we're a part of the few in the community that really pride ourselves on being honest and genuine about the struggle. And so we'll get into the discussion, because this is what it's really all about, and that's what I stand on.
All right, so you had a YouTube channel that was taken down too, huh?
Yeah, you know how it goes when you spitting truth to power, as they say. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a different channel some people are already familiar with, because also I was founder and host of a radio station on Blog Talk called Black I Stand Radio, where I pretty much interviewed, with me and the Liberation Minded Media Network, probably interviewed everybody in the conscious community or in the activism community, or whatever people want to call it. From the Professor James Smalls to the Red Pills to the Unks to the, just and a lot of grassroots ground activism from community organizers that really were doing a lot of different things. Like a lot of we pulled off some good stuff in Seattle, and we got the first law passed that holds police accountable, with an organization called Not This Time, and Andre Taylor, also known as Gorgeous Dre. So what we did is we really hit the streets, and I chronicled the situation, because I thought it was going to be something epic that our people could learn from, because a lot of people don't know that in the laws for every state, when a police kills someone, there's a malice law, a malice clause pretty much in every state. And what that means is if they didn't have any malice intent, you can't even charge them. You can't even talk about like holding them accountable or charging them, for the most part. This is why you see so many police get away up until recently, because to prove malice, that's a state of mind. So you can't prove he maliciously shot someone. That's why they would always fall back on the fear for my life. So what we did is, and it took us two times to do so in about 3 years, is we attacked the malice part of the law. So now, hey, if you kill someone unarmed, unjustified, then you can at least be charged. No guarantee you're going to be convicted, but at least you could be charged. They can't hide behind I had no malicious intent. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
So I mean, the point is, like you were saying, when you're speaking truth to power and you're trying to really build and do some things on a progressive nature that challenges the status quo, a lot of times that conflict of interest will lead to attacks and up to losing YouTube channels, losing your voice. It's basically a way to try to deplatform those. And you'd be surprised that, you would think a couple of, I had 10,000 subscribers on my channel. That's not a lot, you know what I'm saying? By YouTube standards, it's really not. But you know, they are on their job when it comes to that. And a lot of it now these days it's more automated AI, you know, flagging it based on titles, based on buzzwords that you may say, based on content that you're bringing forth. So
right, definitely. But I mean, you can't marginalize your efforts, though. I mean, we say 7,000, 10,000 subs, but they start watching people at around 200, 300, 400. So I mean, that's the good thing. We can't marginalize the energy and stuff that we put forth, and the reception that we receive. I mean, the type of reception we receive from the community at large. So it's definitely something that they notice, and trust me, like we said, they put forth an effort to make sure that they ensure that you don't gain that following that you desire, and that you don't captivate the people in that nature in which they're adamant about being in opposition to. So. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're gonna try to cut it off at the inception if they can.
Yeah.
Before it's too late. You know what I'm saying?
All right.
Anyway, so what we're gonna do? Let's go ahead and pull up. You want to pull up the comments, or just so we can set a base point. The basic topic where we're gonna be going into is reparations, activism, the conscious community, and the conversation. This idea of a conversation was based on some comments that was put on my YouTube channel. But we're not going to specifically just have to stay within that box, but just so we could have our own discussion back and forth and allow other people to join in. I see a couple of people are watching right now. Make sure you guys give a like. You can comment. Let us, any questions, anything you guys want to add on to the conversation is definitely appreciated and accepted.
All right, would you like me to read the comment?
Or we could share it. Hold up. I got one of them I could pull up real quick. Like I said, I couldn't find the other one, but we got this right now. All right, yeah. So this was the initial comment. And this was on a video I did called Taharka Bay, the Short Bus Shepherd. And believe me, we got more on Taharka Bay coming probably tomorrow. It's going to be something epic. He did actually invite me to come on his program. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that, but we definitely going to keep on pushing this issue with, these what I call agent Negroes in the movement, distractions, if you will. So, anyway, so the comment that was put on there, you said you can't possibly be comparing Tariq with the heroes and sheroes of the 60s. I personally don't have a dog in the fight because I've never learned anything from watching anyone in the conscious community, and you put CON, conscious, con in capitalizations, community. But yet, one point, bro, if you ridicule someone for being on the short bus, at least spell shepherd correctly. Shepherd is a criminal who escaped from prison. Shepherd is, and then, different spelling. Shepherd is one who leads a flock. Just saying. And that was cool. Shots fired a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I ain't mad. A little bit of trolling in there. But in retrospect, I spelled shepherd correctly because this cat, Taharka Bay, happens to be an ex-criminal who is leading a flock of other criminals with egregiousness on his record, including but not limited to being a sex offender. And I brought that out, the first person to bring that out, and this is just documented. I'm not even debating if it's true or not. It's documented.
Right,
but yeah,
as of now, I mean, I'm just saying, no person. I mean, like I said, I don't have a dog in that fight, but from what I could gather from what I've seen and heard, not too many people have provided that documentation. They said it's documented, but they haven't provided the documentation. I'm just saying, I mean, playing.
Well, hold on. I'm glad you said that.
I'm just saying. And look, listen. It's one thing that has to be noted too as well. You can see the inconsistencies in his argument when he stated that the reason why he didn't fire back on Taharka was because he noticed that the boys were out there. But then again, in another declaration, he states that it wasn't until I went back home and saw that the boys were out there. And so why didn't you defend yourself? Somebody approaches you, you defend yourself. You have the right to defend yourself. And it's almost like this nuance that states, oh, well, okay, I didn't defend myself because the feds were out there, and then the feds could have incarcerated me, and then who knows what have happened to me after the fact. That's not. Come on, man. You're not on that level. I mean, this is the arrogance of a lot of people, though.
Yes.
Within the so-called, like you said, conscious community, giving themselves a lot more credit, giving themselves a towering reputation without actually being, given one by the people. And that's where I take fault with a lot of these individuals. We know it's a shit. I mean, come on, man. We know it's a clown show, and a lot of it has more to do with clout chasing and anything else, because the vast majority of their content is not dedicated to educating the people. So you can see that's secret. We're not debating that. I like I said, that's why I don't have a dog in that fight. But I'm saying, like, from what I've watched so far, I haven't watched a ton because I don't follow Taharka Bey, but it's obvious that it's trending. So I mean, I haven't seen the documents on his side, nor have I seen the documents from people. So I mean, to me, it's just, I don't know. It's just crazy, man, because it's a lot more going on. It's a lot more pressing issues concerning our people than to be caught up in somebody's squabble. That's just where I rest. And like I said, I want our people to be more informed about the reparations process, if there is any viability to the process to begin with, and should we, and what angles are we pursuing, and are these the right route to be taken in order to truly incur change? And that's where my concern lies. So it's about empowering the people, and how you empower the people is by educating the people. So.
Right, and let me find that document.
Yeah.
It's not on this computer I'm using.
Wow.
But I agree. So I mean, it's like, first of all, I mean, because a lot of the stuff that Taharka Bey's been doing, I've been on his bumper for a minute, because like a lot of the people who he's been attacking are people, some of them, I won't say a lot of them, are people who I know personally, who, like, I know their family. I know, you know what I'm saying? I've done things in the streets as far as activism concerned, community activism with. So it's like, and then a lot of the other people who he attacks, I'm familiar with what they do, even if I don't know them personally. And it's like, a lot of energy being put into disrupting, defaming people who are actually doing tangible things. You know what I'm saying? When only thing he has is a YouTube channel that he happened to start because now people's been looking into his past. And he happened to start that like within a week of catching a case that should have sent them to prison. So it's like you start this YouTube channel at a time you should be going to prison, and the whole content, the whole YouTube channel is dedicated to trying to defame organizations that are actually doing things. And these aren't organizations where the community is saying, hey, this organization is scamming us, they're ripping us off, they're detrimental to the community. No, these are organizations, including one called Sisters of the Underground, who they actually rescue sex trafficked women and DV victims. Why would you want to defame and delegitimize an organization like that that's doing such good work for the community? But then when you look at his record, you see that he is a habitual woman beater of children, career criminal, and he's on the sex offense registry, or at least he was. So now it kind of makes sense. Like, okay, well, you're trying to defame this organization of women that are doing good works to rescue women, because they're rescuing them from people like you. So, these are those things where it's like, if we're going to identify that there is fuckery in this conscious community, and there is, of course, then how do we really look at this from a practical standpoint? Because we can have a disagreement, or we could not like someone's personality, or maybe not even just agree with what they're doing, but is it detrimental? And how do we qualify the difference between I just don't like this person versus this person is actively working deliberately against our best interest as a collective? Because if we know COINTELPRO is a real thing, right? If we know, because we always look back to the past, the 60s, and we see what happened in the 60s. What happened? A lot of our leaders were murdered. Organizations were jailed, falsely accused of things. They were actually lost their lives. not because they're doing something illegal, but because they were doing something that was against the status quo at the time, speaking truth to power and putting actions behind that speaking. So we could assume if they were interested in neutralizing that type of activism in the 60s, you don't think they just now all of a sudden they're good with it. They probably didn't dismantle as much as they rearranged, what the COINTELPRO, how they operate. So now we're seeing, and we have the benefit now because we can look back 50, 60 years and we can do things they couldn't do. We can see in real time who's working against us, and we have a apparatus that can combat that. We didn't have that back then because we didn't know COINTEL existed back then. You know what I'm saying? So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what it is if you take a look at his argument, and it's just as, like I said, I told you. I mean, if you read the comment, I've already established that I have no dog in that fight because I just feel like that's energy being wasted in terms of going back and forth at one another. But his argument that I've heard so far is basically that we need to call out the individuals that's misappropriating money from the community. And to hold these people accountable. My thing is, I think like everybody says, if this is what people want to invest their money in, just like if they any investment or any opportunity comes forward, presented by an individual or a group, then those people have the right to do so. I don't think that you should, too much trip about where people are going to spend their money. We didn't complain so much when people were spending their money with Adidas, Nike, until there was an incident to pop up. So, I mean, we know that there's plenty of organizations and plenty of people who are grifters, but we continue to keep spending our money with them and we don't say anything. So I think that's one of the reasons, from the argument on both sides. One is that he's a grifter and other people are saying, well, if so, and if that's the case, why put too much attention into or pay too much attention to it rather, because people are going to spend their money or invest their money where they see fit. And black people, we spend trillions of dollars, right? Our spending power is more than the GDP of Spain. So, in my opinion, like I said before, it's just one of those things where, to me, without having a dog in the fight, if I were, it's just wasted time and energy. We should be spending time educating our people on the matters at hand. It's just like when you watch mainstream media, not to say that their information is, infallible, but we're going to say that at least every day they're informing the people about events that are taking place. We need to pick up with the pace of the way that news travels. Not to be going back and forth, or to participate in individuals going back and forth about trivial issues. And that's really just my own concern. So let me see right here. I'm trying to read this. Okay.
Peace Rock official. I don't know what he means by that. The Freedom Bank needs to be investigated. I don't really even know what that means.
Freedom Bank is a black bank or something like that. I'm not sure, but I think that's what he may be talking about.
Investigated for what? Like, do you have any other information that you can provide to put a little bit of context behind?
Yeah, because I'm not sure about that, but I think that's a.
It sounds like it would be, right? Or this could be a troll. Rock official could be a troll because, like, it's always suspicion being raised, and this is one of the things. Like, to me, it's not so trivial when we do have to learn how to identify certain detractors and provocateurs that will come amongst us, because that's the advantage we have that we didn't have back in like the 60s or prior to. We didn't have the ability to identify.
I don't mean to interrupt, but this goes back to what we're talking about, the education. What it alludes to, even if that's a troll or not, it's still a certain amount of truth to his declaration, simply because when you look at the banking system, and this is where we talk about our people being informed about this debt-based monetary system of the United States government. So when you take a look at the banking system, over 90% of the money that's printed up is really through the banking system. And they have this thing called fractional reserve banking, where they only have to have about 10% in that bank in terms of what you deposit in there at any given moment in time. So they're always lending out your money. They're always, you know, they're gambling with your money, right? So I mean, even if you own your bank and you say, well, this is a black bank, this is any type of, you know, you can have it on a, you know, a philosophical, you know, have a philosophical stance, but that still doesn't take away or detract from your business practices, how banks operate. Okay, in the large scheme of things. And so even if we have banks, it still has to operate, you know, based according to how banks operate, right? And so there is a little bit of truth to that, but I wouldn't say that, you know, if that is the black bank, that that's, you know, that they're all out just, you know, schooling the people. But there are banking practices in general that don't work in the best interest of the people. So,
well, I mean, and that's why I would disagree to the point of to single out the Freedmen Bank, because all bank, like you said, they operate on fractional reserve. That means that they only have to have a fraction of the reserves in their actual bank, right? Yeah. So Bank of America, if everybody went to their bank right now to pull out the money, it's not there.
Exactly, that's called a run on the bank.
Yeah, but you're preaching to the choir. I agree with that. You're preaching to the choir. I teach crypto. I understand crypto. I understand finances because of what I've learned about crypto. I understand what the financial banking is. That's a scam. They're able to loan out money while they're paying you 0.25%. They're loaning out your money, our money collectively, you know, and getting a much higher yield on the investments that they're reinvesting our money with. I agree with that. But that's a whole banking industry issue. That's not a Freedmen Bank issue. They're going to operate up based on what's already set up. So that means they're going to operate with fractional reserve banking as well, because that's how the industry is set up. So if anything, I would say we need to investigate all these banks, or what kind of alternatives do we have? But a lot of people ain't ready for that conversation, because we do have alternatives that can make us a lot less reliant on banks if people are ready for that conversation.
Yeah, true enough, true indeed. Yeah, I know, but it's just that's a part of the, like you said, the larger conversation, and it's one of those things where even learning, and we'll go into that. I don't know when you want to go into that, but that's the particulars. Those are the things that I want to go into to talk about, like you talked about, the feasibility or the viability of reparations. Does it really actually exist? And I think if it does, what routes do we take in order to get there? I think there needs to be clarification in that regard. And if we can't get any clarity, then the only thing that we're going to end up doing is just arguing like our predecessors over, you know, what routes to take. And if we can't, you know, understand which way to, you know, how to actually get there, then I think that we'll be ultimately working backwards and stuff, and we'll just end up in the same place, if not a worse predicament, because as time goes on, we find out that it becomes you know, less opportunities are created in order to actually get to that end. So
well, I mean, I think sometimes you just got to move on things. I mean, you can't just study something to the point to where you think you studied it perfectly before you start actually moving on it. Sometimes you learn as you move on it.
But you got to have the basics though, bro. You got to have the basics. My thing is, okay, when you talked about, let's, you know, to get off Target Bay for a second, we talk about this debt-based economy. Now, as of January, we realized and we know that they had reached their debt ceiling. Okay, for those who don't understand what a debt ceiling is, the debt ceiling is the most amount of money that the Treasury Department can borrow or create these bonds. Okay, now they claim that they don't want to borrow any money. The government has refused to borrow any money, so they have till June, right? June at the latest, July, to come to an agreement. One of the things that we understand is that the House Speaker has said, okay, well, we're not going to negotiate on Social Security. We're not going to negotiate on Medicare. We're not cutting any of these programs, veteran programs, anything like that. Where is this money going to come from in order to pay the government's bills, the federal government's bills? Where is this money going to come from? So when we take a look and we take a couple steps back from when we were talking about, or when we know about the task force that was created by the state of California, the task force responsibility is basically, like we talked about, to research and to gather information and then present that information to the California legislature. And then it is incumbent upon the California legislature to pass that law, right? But so when we hear all of this money, $5 million for the residents of San Francisco and this time money, these are just ideas. It carries no weight whatsoever in its rhetoric. And a lot of our people say, oh, you know, they're about to give money. And we just go off on a tangent off of that and say, you know, they're about to give money out in California. They talking about reparations. They've been talking for a very long time. since Conyers, the representative of Michigan, had put it at the feet of Congress in 1987 or 1989, right? And so we know that they've been talking about it. But what's the likelihood? Because see, now once they've talked about it, then they have to go through measures of seeing where is the money going to come from. So what did the task force do? They said, oh, okay, to get the money, not the money for reparations, but the money to actually keep the task force viable. They said, let's shut down 10 prisons in order to pay us so that we can figure out how to pay you. That's inexcusable. And then so what else did they suggest? They said, okay, well, let's get it from property taxes, estate taxes. Well, if you look at California's constitution in 1973, they had declared that, okay, well, we're not going to give, you can't sit up there and negotiate on the property taxes that they have or that they're paying from when they purchase their property will be the taxes that they will continue to pay, for as long as they purchase that property. That's non-negotiable. So then you would have to amend the Constitution, all right, and in order to even make that feasible. So it's so many things, so many hoops that they have to jump through. Not to mention, they would have to word it in such a way to prevent white folks from taking advantage of it, because then you have white folks who can say, oh, I got a black grandmother that was enslaving, so it's so many things that they have to do in order to make this work, right? And then the bottom line is we're like, okay, well, where does the money come from? Because that's what we're talking about, right? Where does the money come from? How are they going to raise the money? We can't just sit up here and talk about reparations if they don't know where the money's going to come from. And someone's like, oh, well, yeah, they've been giving money to Ukraine. How come they can't? Because you see these general arguments. They've been giving money to Ukraine. Okay, they've been giving money to Ukraine, but that's a part of the defense budget. That's called military spending or defense spending. They give money to Ukraine because they also give drones, helicopters, airplanes, guns. They tabulate that and make that a part of the monetary amount for Ukraine. Ukraine's been receiving money from the United States since 2014, since Russia annexed Crimea. Okay, they were just surpassed by Israel. So we have to understand the geopolitical framework, what the United States does in order to keep its foothold in other countries in this neo-colonial era. This is what this is really all about. So we have to say this. Remember that earthquake that just happened in Turkey? All right, didn't they give Turkey aid? Because Turkey's an ally. All right, Syria is not an ally of the United States. They didn't receive any aid from the United States. So this is my point. If all the allies of the United States are receiving monetary funding and they're not giving black people any money, then how should black people categorize themselves? As an enemy of the state. They're not giving you no money. So this is the whole point of this exercise. This is to show you where you stand. And if we say, like we take a look at our ancestors, we say, well, okay, you don't want to give us no money? Let's use our $1 trillion spending power. Let's not spend with you. All your holidays, done. We're done with all of that. Till you give us what you owe. And then I know they'll find the money. But as long as you keep coming back to somebody, spending with them, it's non-negotiable. They have zero tolerance. Mind you, the United States told you a long time ago, we don't negotiate with terrorists. And how they characterize us are enemies of the state because they see the organizational pressure building within the so-called black race. And when they see you trying to educate your own children, do your own thing, they like, nigga, why I'm gonna give you some money? Look at the measures they taking. They arguing about critical race theory. So if they know that the first one to the mind is the women, and you're trying to make an attempt to educate yourselves, to heighten your awareness, why am I going to endorse that? Why am I going to finance that? They've never done it and never will. That's counterproductive and counterintuitive to the empire state, to neo-colonial efforts. They don't see, they can't rationalize that, and they never will. And that's the stance that I think that our people should take, is understanding what measures to take, first of all, and but before that, how this system operates and why, it doesn't make it feasible if you take the whole approach of, oh, well, yeah, let's just get the money. CTC, cut the check. You've been given. Those arguments don't work when it comes to them. The bottom line is what they're concerned about.
Well, you made some good points, and we could talk about where the money would come from. Ironically, that is why I do have the virtual background behind me that is showing. But I mean, like, here's what it is, though. They can come up with the money. If they have to do some balancing of budgets, they can come up with a bag. You know what I'm saying? That's not a problem. They came up with trillions of dollars for the pandemic and all that. Now, if your position is that they're not going to do it, whatever their decision is, the reason why we have to keep pushing this is so we can get that answer now instead of pushing it down the road 50, 100 years. Make them say right now they're not going to give us the money then. I'm good with that. We let them say right now, no, we're not giving y'all nothing. Cool. Now what we can do is organize based upon that. And part of that organization, as you stated, would be on, let's not spend no money with them. Let's pull that trillion, because we do actually have more than $1 trillion that we circulate. We have enough collective wealth that we would be the wealthiest of the black nations in the world. So if that's the case, yes, I would love to see our people pull that money. Let's pull away from their political system. Let's pull away from all of that. And so if they're going to say no, we need to push this issue so that they do say no. But as far as having, go ahead.
But if you take it's implied in the philosophical tenets of American society. And what do I mean by that? Our monetary system is a debt-based monetary system, which means we operate off of debt. We're over $30 trillion in debt. Not we, they, because I ain't been spending that money.
Right.
They're $30 trillion in debt. So which means if you go to a person they already owe you, and not to mention on a side note, the audacity of a nation to talk about black people should get their credit right when this nation is in debt. But I digress. The point being is that you have a debt-based system where these people issue out bonds or IOUs and tell other countries, other investors, I owe you money. So this is the same thing we're saying. So if everybody is pulling and tugging at the United States saying you owe me money, and the United States history is literally based on an IOU system, what is the probability based off of that philosophy that we're more than likely going to get our money from the United States? They don't even want to pay people that they already owe. And I'm not saying this to water down and say this movement. You said this, and this is what is so important. It's for us to understand what position to take. If Johnny come lately don't want to pay you, it's for a reason, because this is a part of his monetary, this is how his monetary system is set up. So you have to, like you said, learn how to use your power. One, who do we attack? They said you attack 3 avenues. One, you attack the government, but we've already established that the government is broke. We know that because it's in debt. All right. 2, you attack private industries, which we know that that's your most formidable opponent, and that's the one who actually has the money. The prison systems disproportionately locking up black men and women. So we know they got the money. Okay, we know that the oil industry has it. Do you know that Tulsa, Oklahoma was called the oil capital of the world? Black people had oil in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A lot of people don't understand that Tulsa, Oklahoma was rich because of its oil. But then who did you have coming and competing to be the oil baron of that century was Rockefeller, okay, and Standard Oil. So you think Tulsa, Oklahoma burned down because it was black walls? No, it burned down because they had oil. Research, I tell people to do your research and understand that Tulsa, Oklahoma was the oil capital of the world, not America, the world. Okay, that's very important. All right, and then so you got oil now, and you take a photo. Let's look at these names. All right, in the 20th century, because let's look and peer into this deeply. When you take a look at who built America, this is the argument. Black people say we built America, and most people, generally speaking, not all, but generally speaking, state that those who built America, it was us, and we did it by picking cotton. Well, the philosophical disagreement comes from white people state that the Industrial Revolution is what built America. All right, so they start naming people like who? Andrew Carnegie, who was part of the steel industry. All right, Henry Ford, automotive and the assembly line. Okay, then you have an individual by what's his name? Vanderbilt. All right, the railroads and shipping industry. Okay, and then you have J.P. Morgan, banking and finance. So they're called robber barons. And what's the definition of a robber baron? Someone who made tons of wealth at the expense of other people. So white folks will say, look, we know that there was slavery, we know that there was this and there was that, but don't you benefit from the railroads? Don't you benefit from the oil? Don't you benefit from the cars? Don't you benefit from this, that, and the other? Right? So they're saying the Industrial Revolution, the first and the second one is what built America, not picking cotton. And we're not here to dispute whether he's right or wrong. We're saying that this is the ideological stance of both groups. Black people are saying we built America, and then we'll go from entertainment and cotton. That's where we go, because a lot of our viewpoints are limited. We'll say, oh, and then you're cultural appropriationists. No, we were inventors, doctors, lawyers, scientists. We were the ones doing this. So we gotta fight for our intellectual properties, which means you have to attack corporate America. Look at Henrietta. Look, her blood was used for chemotherapy, gene mapping, cloning, in vitro fertilization. This were all intellectual property stolen from one woman that literally is the stepping stone to 21st century medical knowledge as we know it. But yet there's no compensation for her family.
So basically listen, all of that actually is part of the reparations conversation, because what you're saying and pointing out is the fact that every industry was built on our backs. It doesn't matter when the Industrial Revolution started. The foundation of it, the foundation of it was built on the backs of what we produced. It was more than just cotton. So the virtual background behind me right now that you're seeing, where you see all the list of all these different companies, including JP Morgan Chase, and there's some that are left off. What this represents are companies who had their inception in slavery and benefited and grossed wealth, you know what I'm saying, based on enslavement of our people. That's what these companies behind me represent. These companies were built on the back of enslaving our people. So if you want to talk about where the money's coming from, me personally, and I haven't heard this being spoken about in the reparations conversation. I brought this up on my other channel. I brought this up before on my radio program. But I would say the money for reparations, the first conversation, or at least one of the conversations, primary conversations, should be based upon these companies that are wealthy right now, that were built upon our enslavement. This includes major insurance companies, financial institutions like banks, railroad companies, a lot of clothing companies where that cotton was refined and turned into clothing. So that's where I would say we start. And I would also say that as far as the government, yeah, they might facilitate the deal. How they benefit the most, because they didn't own those cargo ships. Those were privately owned for the most part. But they benefited from institutions and infrastructure largely. Right. You know what I mean?
And listen, not to mention, think about this. Not to mention the like you said, the attack. And we're talking about what attack. See, everybody knows that we deserve reparations, and are we immigrant blacks? What the hell is this nigga talking about? I'm from Michigan. I mean, what are you talking about? We all
he's trolling at this point.
This is the problem though too.
He's trolling.
We have to understand that this is our planet. I don't deal with that. That's another thing I don't deal with. This is our planet. This is a planet designed for melanated beings, but I digress. The point being is that we go back to what we were just talking about. It is the attack. And who are we attacking? Our attack, if you notice, and like you said, generally speaking, our attack is more directed toward the government than it is toward private corporations, because if you can see how things are set up, the corporations got to stop. They got lawyers for days. You can't attack the pharmaceutical companies. They won't even admit wrongful, in lawsuits. They won't even admit any wrongdoing. You can't sue them if your child is vaccinated and they, and they're injured because of the vaccination, or irreparable damage occurs. You can't attack these corporations. You can't say me and you can talk about Biden all day, call him all sorts of, make all sorts of disparaging comments against him and his administration. Yet soon as we say something against corporate America, they could sue you. They show you where the power lies. You see what I'm saying? So this is where we have to attack, where the power lies. If we're trying to be empowered, you attack where the power lies. The government doesn't have any power. And how do I explain this? 2008, the financial crisis. Remember, that financial crisis occurred because of predatory loans. Yeah. To who? Targeting our population. And then what did the government respond to, ironically enough, with a black president? They said that these corporations were too big to fail.
Yeah, that was cap.
We gotta give them billions of dollars. And black folks at this time, when reparations was on the hot seat, didn't say, no, we're not gonna let you just give billions of dollars to a corporation that just literally attacked us again financially. And then we said nothing. And so what was the government saying philosophically? That we're run by corporate America. They're too big to fail. If they fail, we fail. So who has the power?
it's not just that though. The corporations also lobby these politicians. So the very politicians that are owned by these corporations are putting in policies to strengthen what they do. So really, like, here's my, from my understanding, look, this reparations conversation has to be a conversation because it encompasses everything. So we don't have to have just one particular person speaking of it, because there's so many different angles that it bleeds into that also have to be investigated in these conversations, and some solutions to some of these challenges must be had. And like I said, at the end of the day, make them say they ain't giving us no reparations if that's what they're going to do. Make them say it right now. Let's not kick this can 50 more years down the road, 100 years down the road, where we're still having this conversation. If they ain't going to pay it, make them say it right now. The sooner, the better. I would rather them come on.
They've been saying it though, bro. They've been saying, especially specifically the Republican Party, and the average taxpayer has been saying, why? Because this is the argument, right? And we're saying that this is their argument. This is not my argument, but we know we've heard this argument time and time again, right? Which is, I'm a taxpayer. I didn't own any slaves. You're not slaves. So why should I have to pay you when you didn't go through slavery? Why should my tax dollars pay you, right? For something that you didn't experience and neither did I experience. But we know, they don't want to include the Jim Crow era. They don't want to include the eugenics movement. They don't want to include none of these things, right? So you got to have general conversations with people, which is also one of the reasons why this discussion leads to nowhere more often than not, because you can't get into the details, and we know that the devil is in the detail. So what thing that we have to attack, which is a no-brainer, because even Republicans can agree with this, the so-called 1%, is who runs the world, right? So these are the people that we're attacking, the oligarchs. We're attacking the aristocracy. We want our payment from you, who we know profited the most, who we know got this money. Okay, let's center it on that. Let's not necessarily saying that the government doesn't have responsibility, but remember, the government's going to bear its responsibility when you attack corporate America. They're two heads of the same coin. We got to stop saying government and be like, look, you corporations who continue to keep making money off of, like you mentioned, the insurance companies. Aetna used to take out policies on slaves. All right, one of the biggest insurance companies to date. So we know that you're liable. We know that you're responsible. Let's start dropping the names. If you take a look at Israel, right, the so-called chosen people, when they got their reparations from Germany, West Germany, then East Germany later on gave them reparations. They sued. You know who companies came forward and paid? BMW, Volkswagen, IBM. You see what I'm saying? The companies came forward and paid. So if we're going to look at this and then see how these individuals got their money, it was because companies came through and they cut them checks. You know what I'm saying? And so that's exactly what we have to do. We have to attack corporate America, because by attacking corporate America, you are attacking the government. There is no, they're two heads of the same coin. We can leave the government out of this and give it a name. Give our reparations attack a name, and that name being we demand corporate America to give us our money back. That's a totally different. We haven't heard that approach. We keep hearing government, but the government can always feign ignorant. We don't know where the money's gonna come from. We sitting up here trying to chop heads on this and that just to try to pay our bills. How are we gonna function? Where you gonna get the money from? No, we're not talking to you. We're talking to Aetna. We're talking to the private prison industry. We're talking to the pharmaceutical companies. We're talking to the oil industry. That's what we're talking to. Cut that damn check.
Okay, then. I'm with that. Look, you ain't got no disagreement from me.
Right.
I mean, this is why I have that background that I have, and I've been speaking about this for years. So I think that conversation should be more mainstream by our platforms, right? That conversation of, yes, they owe that money. U.S. Today owes that money. New York Life owes that money. J.P. Morgan owes that money. Wells Fargo owes that money. Bank of America owes that money. AIG owes that money. Mm-hmm. So we can start directing that conversation towards that. I think from a broader sense, like you said, most people, they just look at it as the government, which they did actually have play a significant role, of course. But yeah, I think we do need to start honing a little bit more. I think as more people at least have these conversations, then we could at least start directing it in different places like that. But the conversation has to be had. That's first. Second, I mean, I don't even really want to overcomplicate it, because basically everyone knows the money is owed. And it don't have to be complicated with having to set up these different commissions and all this extra stuff. Look, they know how to wire that money. They can cash app that money. They know who we are. They know who they owe it to. They could, just as easy as they did for that stimulus package, they could easily wire our bank accounts, send a check, send Bitcoin. I don't give a damn. Put it to Venmo, put it to Cash App. Just run the money. Cut the check.
Yeah.
And if that check isn't going to be cut, like I said, let's get to the nitty gritty and let's hear it abundantly. No. That way now we who are conscious, truly conscious. I'm not talking about these wokes. I'm not talking about these superficial. They want to have these philosophical debates about nothing. I'm talking about those of us who actually know what time it is and what needs to be done and are willing to actually put in some work behind what we know. Because then now we can start having those conversations, which we haven't had in a long time. I mean, I know we did, like, I want to say 2018, there was the blackout where we really did show how much damage we could do by withdrawing our money from some of these holidays. And it showed that we cost companies billions of dollars. So we know we have the potential to do that. And I think, like you said, that is something that we do need to start exercising again. Let's pull back, because now we're putting the pressure on them. When they see, okay, like, remember when a few years ago when Starbucks employee called the police on some brothers who were waiting to have a meeting in Starbucks? Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. It was a few years ago. There was these two brothers. They were going to have a business meeting in Starbucks, and one of their employees called the police and made major news. And all of a sudden, Starbucks shut down some of, like, 80,000 of their stores for one day to do some racial sensitive training or whatever it was. Understand why they did that and what that really was signaling. It could have been capped. We don't know what their true intentions or what they felt their sentiments were. But obviously, if they figured that if our people got organized behind not spending with Starbucks based on that action that happened, they knew they were going to lose a lot of money. So they were willing to at least look like they're trying to do something to correct that issue. That means that we have a lot of leverage with a lot of these companies because of how much money we spend, that they are afraid that potentially what we can do, because they assessed threats based on capabilities, not intentions. So our capability to withdraw from their finances, withdraw and not spend with them, means that they lose a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, that's power that we have, that we can now negotiate. Hey, we ain't spending no money with, and as we pull money from them, we start spending with ourselves. Now we're building up as we're destroying them to a certain degree. But that's the potential power that we have. So we can lean on them and make it more probable, or at least give us the best shot to reach these goals. But at the end of the day, if they don't, then hey, let us know. Because then now we can redirect our funds and we can strengthen our own platforms, and we can Black Wall Street this again all over the country. We have that potential.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I just, it's something interesting when I talk to people, and I use this quote, and it doesn't pertain to our conversation, but when I talk to people, I talk about say y'all on Twitter about this discussion because
listen, Rock, let me just say this, man, because look, I mean, like, on the real, I think you're a troll, for real. And if you can't tell, like if you're a Black American and you can't tell by our conversation what cloth we come from, then you probably ain't supposed to.
But listen, though, this is paranoid state. They're not disputing most people don't dispute the information. They try to attack the individual and try to see, it's nothing to do with the message. The messenger, I got a problem. The shoe's too shiny, or the melanin ain't black enough, or we ain't got time for all of that. Nobody cares. This is another thing about the reparations movement in particular. If I were to say so myself, it has a lot to do with us not acknowledging the fact that this was a global campaign by Europeans. Why would we want it to be global anyways? This is a global campaign on the part of the Europeans. When you take a look at the history of the United States of America, remember, they told you in this narrative, if you buy into it, who did they say discovered America? Wasn't it Christopher Columbus? But Christopher Columbus, wasn't he not paid, and endorsed by the Spaniards? So it was Spain that discovered America, because that's who paid Christopher Columbus. All right? And when
discovered it for who, though? discovered it for them, sure.
Exactly. I'm saying, yeah, if you buy into the narrative. So then you had what powers here? You had the French here. You had the Spanish here. You had the Portuguese here. You had the English here. All of them were fighting for control of the United States. And so what we perceive as the United States was not the United States that we look at today as it was then. It was along the eastern seaboard. Okay? So when you take a look at how the United States was, or the colonies were made up, you had 13 colonies. And then you had East and West Florida being controlled by Spain. You had Louisiana territories, which included 14 states being controlled by Napoleon. Then you had some of the western states being controlled by the Indians and the Spanish too as well. So this was not the United States that we think it was.
No,
that's what's important. This was a global campaign on the part of Europeans. Then you have
that's
the
facts.
Congo conference of 18. What'd you say?
That's facts. Yeah, it was a global campaign. Absolutely.
Then you have the Congo conference of 1884 and 1885. You see what I'm saying? Where they split up Africa amongst themselves too as well, fighting, so they didn't have to fight the way that they were fighting over in the Americas. You see, so if we look at the fact that they're putting forth a global campaign and global dominance, as we call it, why are we not trying to do the same? Why are we nitpicking as if it's only going to be us to take up this assault? They got stations, military stations all across the entire globe, so-called globe. So for us to sit back and try to compartmentalize the struggle is just the most ridiculous stuff that I've ever heard in my life.
Well, listen, I disagree with that, because I understand that it was a global colonization that happened. However, as far as if we're going to have the reparations conversations for the United States, then we do have to distinguish those who are due that. Because if you're from Jamaica or somewhere else in the Caribbean, then you have your fight with Spain. You have your fight with England. You have your fight with France. You know what I'm saying? So, but for distribution of reparations in this country, there's only a you know what I'm saying? There's a particular cloth of what some call FBA or ADOS or Freedmen, whatever you want to categorize it is, that money is owed to specifically. You know what I'm saying?
But so even though it goes back to our understanding of how the global economy works. Remember, like when 2008, when the United States economy shut down, who was all affected? The entire globe. So when one company has to dish out, other companies have to dish out because they're part of an umbrella. You know how to, like you said, you understand Wall Street. How is people who have shares in these companies, and these shareholders are not always from the United States. They're from Japan, they're from China. So all these other nations are going to pay for us. That's how they see it. So when we take a look at all these countries that are invested, who owns most of the United States debt? Well, at least 30 to 40% of it. Other countries, China being the biggest holder of our debt. So we can't have this is why I say it's ludicrous for us to say, well, we just have to think about us being paid. Well, other countries have to be involved in this payment process. It's going to be a world issue no matter if we like it or not.
Okay, well, that's fine. And from the standpoint of this country, then we're handling this part. If you're in the Caribbean, you handle that part. Wherever you are, you handle that part. But
it's no law against us trading off ideas, is what I'm saying.
There isn't nothing wrong with that. There isn't nothing wrong with that. When the whole ADOS popped off and they were making the distinction between, what they called American descendants of slaves and immigrants, I thought that was a divisive conversation at first, because I thought it was like, we're basically isolating and, throwing shade at other people. But now I understand it's not about shade. It's not about we don't like other people. If they're rocking with us, then we rock with them. But there are those who actually undermine us purposely, and they say goofy shit like this rock official dude, which I don't know where he's from, but he's suspect to me. And they do different things to undermine. So we have to make that distinction of, okay, when it comes to us pushing our issues, we have to be the ones that are the executives and that control that narrative, because we can't go to Jamaica and tell them how to fight their fight with England, especially if we're going to be undermining their efforts. That would be ridiculous. So we can't have other people doing the same. That's basically what it boils down to.
Yeah, we can't, but we have to at least, like we said, strengthen our bonds with our brothers and sisters across the line. Because, for instance, like you said, let's say, for instance, we take the initiative to become these new captains of industries like the Rockefellers, the Fords, the Carnegies, and the Vanderbilts, right? We building up these new captains of industry for the 21st century. Okay, where are we going to get the raw materials?
Hey, I agree.
Raw materials, the same place where the Blanco goes and gets the raw materials from Africa.
Right, and that's why it's not just important to have that distinction, but it's also good to have the distinction between who we could really work with and not, because it ain't going to be just like it ain't going to be all of us that are African Americans or ADOS or FBAs. It ain't gonna be all of us. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's some of us that are no good that I don't even want to work with because they're no good. So just like there's that here, there's that everywhere. And there's only gonna be a select few that we can really work with and network with to make this happen, because you're right. No matter what we do, no matter how high we develop here in this country, we're gonna have to be able to make moves. Okay, we want to have some coffee businesses. Well, we're gonna get some coffee from Kenya and Ghana or whatnot. Okay, we want to do some gold. We want to get into the gold business where we know where the best gold is. Now we just in diamonds. Now we cut the De Beers out the game. We get it straight from them, and now we could be rocked up, iced up, and it's not gonna, you know what I'm saying, without all the extra fees and all that.
We're looking at, is this almost like that analogy? Don't show me the steak. Don't show me how the cow was killed. It's the same problem we have with economics. Like, we're looking at the finished product of things. We're looking at the automobiles. We fail to realize there's chips in these automobiles. Remember the chip crisis a couple years ago? Because our people got to realize that these come from raw materials. Right. The chip comes from something called sand. Okay, that's why it's called Silicon Valley, because silicon is silicon dioxide, which means it comes from sand. All right. Now they're having a shortage of sand, right now, and for the world supply. Therefore, they had a shortage of microchips, so they had to cease the production of vehicles. So this is important. So we're talking about how raw materials affect products. Okay, so like you said before, we can sit there. You see the Blanco, he over in Africa right now, trying to negotiate because he see China putting a foothold over in Africa. Over in Africa right now, negotiating, trying to get money. Because see, what did the Africans say? We don't want you. Now look what they do. Blanco coming with his money. See, we could learn from these things. This is recent news. So he said, oh, okay. You want to go in Africa? Africa saying they don't want to mess with you no more. And all of a sudden, Biden's like, here go $54 billion, man. Won't you mess with us? No, we're fine. We got the raw materials. We don't need to mess with you. Right. We're understanding where the power lies, the audacity.
And those are riders. Listen, if they could take that stance, then those are riders. Those are the kind of people that we have to network with. Not the ones that's willing to sell it out. Not the ones that's willing to sell out their best interest for $1 and still continue to keep puppets on top of their countries. And those are the ones that will undermine what we're doing, because really, like, it gets deep. But we have to solidify our own base is the point. We have to refine our own base before we can even work collectively and efficiently with others. So like for me, I don't think Pan-Africanism is dead, but I don't think it can actually be a viable strategy until we have our base solidified. They have their base, all with different interests. Then we can connect them. You know what I'm saying? Because because if you even look at it from like the European standpoint, okay, they all work together, but they first solidified their own base. France solidified their base. Spain solidified their base. United States, England, they solidified their own bases. Then they can collectively work together for their own best interests.
But listen, you see the difference between how the Blanco solidified his own base. He was ready to go to war with his own people to do it. See,
you have to do that, and that's where we're at right now.
That's where we're at right now. And that's where black people, that's my point. That's what we would have to almost be prepared for, because we are given the illusion of white solidarity. Remember, the Blanco been through a revolutionary war, a World War I, a World War II. He don't get along with himself. This is the illusion that he gets along with himself.
Yes, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Something called nationalism. Oh, look at Ukraine and Russia. No, all I see is Blancos going to war with each other. You got me messed up. Because if it was Africans going to war, you would say that's black on black crime, no matter where we are in the so-called globe. Right. So he can hide through nationalism. America, Britain, the Netherlands. No, all I see is Blancos. What are you talking about?
Right.
Going to war with each other.
Right.
And so we have to understand that in an effort to get that, and then after he goes to war with each other, notice what he does. He'll repair or offer reparations. That's what reparations means. It means to repair. Yeah. After World War II, they put together what? They put together, some money, the Marshall Plan, to repair Europe in the amount of $13 billion at the time. They rebuilt Europe because they're like, oh, ain't no way in heck we're going to leave ourselves in shambles. We're going to rebuild, and because we're the leaders of the so-called quote unquote free world. So we have to understand that we know that their agenda is the agenda that they're putting the most emphasis on. And why not? Like, you have to understand something about, the nature of a species. You know what I'm saying? So, it's all about preservation of that species. First, natural preservation, personal or self-preservation, and then it's preservation of the species. These people told you in their books what the 2 laws of nature are. So if they telling you the 2 laws of nature is first to preserve self, then to preserve your species, where do you fall in line? You third at best. You third at best. So we keep looking for an answer from these blancos, and they've been telling us through their rhetoric, through their philosophy, through their science, that it's about us first. You right. Second, third at best.
Right. So we have to take the standpoint it's about us first and force those changes that we need, because we have the power to do so. They can't operate with us. They couldn't build this without us. They understand if we were to collectively start pulling from them in certain ways, politically, economically, then we would have the leverage to force their hand, because power only respects power at the end of the day. They don't care about sentiments. They don't care about tears. They don't care about intentions. They care about capabilities and actions behind that. Now, let me say this real quick to everybody that's watching. Make sure you give it a like. I appreciate y'all that's in the chat. I'm going to address something that Nina said. I know a lot of people watch this channel based on the back and forth Tarka Bay stuff, and she said, I'm assuming it's a she, I don't think you can get off the sex offender registry. If my law background reminds me, you can never what's that say, unalive being a sex offender. You're always a sex offender. Here's the thing, as far as the registry, when you read it, and I'm gonna go ahead and share this real quick. Let me see. When you look at it, what it says is, and this is where, no disrespect, but reading comprehension is important. I say this because he likes to cap a lot. So what it says is registered, and then it has a / lifetime sex offender. So what that means is registered and or lifetime. So you could be registered just for a specific amount of time. I believe that's 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Or you could be lifetime. So you don't necessarily have to be on the registry for a lifetime. It depends on the degree of crime that you committed. And keep in mind, in order to be on the registry, period, means you were convicted at some point. And let me address something else that you said about sealing records. You can seal records, right? You can get things expunged off your record through the courts, but it doesn't seal police records. That's why this right here, which is showing him as registered, and just to prove it's him, you can see his name right there. Hold up. And you can see that he signed this himself. He signed this paperwork. So he's aware. But like I said, yeah, you don't have to be on it for a lifetime. And in order to be on it, means you were convicted. So there's, what I'm saying? And you can seal your court records, but you can't seal the police records. This is what this is. This is a police record. This isn't the actual case that put him on there. This case just shows you that at one point he was on there, and this is 2016. Doesn't mean he's still registered right now. But in 2016, he was registered as a sex offender. There's no arguing that. So I just want to address that.
Well, yeah, he just offered a challenge yesterday, starting the month. He said that if you could prove he's a sex offender, they have $3,000 in the trust.
But the thing is, he that's cap though. See, when this first information first came out, the first thing he said is that information was doctored and it wasn't factual. That we basically photoshopped that information in there. That was the first thing he said. Then when Sonetta started pushing it and other people with bigger channels started pushing it, he realized he had to address it more. Because one of the things he was saying to me was like, oh, you have a graveyard channel. Your channel's too small to be significant. So he was banking on that. Then more and more people start picking up on it. Now he starts changing the story. But the cap is this, because he'll also say, I'm not on the registry anymore. Well, of course, maybe you're not. Maybe the time expired. Maybe you quit registering. Guess who else isn't on there? The Jared from Subway. He's not on the registry either because he's still in prison, so he hasn't registered yet. Once he gets out, he has to register, then he'll be on the registry. So he's playing little games like that. It's called cap. Second of all, if you have your record expunged, you may not be able to find the actual case that put him on there. But there are people digging, and the police records will still show it, period. Because you can't seal the police records. You can seal the court records, not the police records, homie. So sooner or later, that information is going to come out.
Listen, through conversation, through dialogue, you already know it's one of those things where it's driven by, like you said, clout chasing. Because why wouldn't you want to open dialogue with me? And he said that to a few people. Oh, your channels are too small. So that's why you're going after Tariq Nasheed. You're going after him because of this platform. You constantly talk about how big his platform is. Why is it, a lot of our brothers and sisters call it pocket watching, whatever it is. If you get people to invest, I think that our people are intelligent enough to make their own decisions. If they feel like they want a museum, that's what they want. If you feel like the money should be going elsewhere, say like you want to put together your own task force for reparations. Why not convince people to do that? Why are you wasting time on Tariq Nasheed? That's been my only thing. I would never have a dog in that fight. Because one thing you're going to realize, and this is apart from Tariq Nasheed, this is just generally speaking, it has nothing to do with him, but I'm saying that you'll find out all throughout American history there's been even cults, right? Okay, if a man can come back and convince people that he's Jesus, there's always going to be a following for somebody. As long as you got the charisma, you got the courage to get up in front of people and tell people what you believe, some people will follow you. That's a no-brainer. So it's like you're fighting a fight that just shouldn't be fought, in my opinion. I think that the counter strategy would be to do what? Is to start up your own movement. Come on. And you see Taharka is just not good at doing that. He's not doing that. So that's not his assignment, if you ask me. That's not his assignment. His assignment is to disrupt, defame, spread disinformation, and attack anything that's progressively supported by our people. That's what it is. He doesn't talk about the police that's killing us. When Dylan Roof killed us, he made a video blaming black people for that. When that white boy killed those 10 people in Buffalo last year, he made a video saying it's the black power community's fault because they should have had the intel to stop it, and just all this goofy shit that is just ridiculous. No smoke for any of the injustices. No direction. It's just, let me attack this organization, that organization, and that's pretty suspect. Mm-hmm. So yeah, what he's doing with Tariq is because it's clout chasing. He wants to get his numbers up, but he got his feelings hurt because when Tariq brought out the sex offense registry stuff. So he can't prove that he's not a sex offender. He can only cap about it. But we can look at the rest of his records that have been brought out about being a habitual woman beater and child abuser and robbing and beating and tying up women at pizza shops and nail shops, robbing them and shit, and snitching on his co-defendant. So this dude has a despicable past. He's a despicable individual. But you're right. You just said cults are a real thing. So he still has an audience of people who will still support him. Period. Yeah, because he's one of them people who firmly believes in what he's doing to a fault. Like when you have somebody who you can't discourage in that regard, like you can't convince them of their pathology, it's nothing that you can do. Just like, like I said, just sitting on the sidelines, man, I look at the conscious community from like a spectator. It's a spectator sport to me because it has nothing to do with real education. It has everything to do with general and blanket arguments and statements, things that, they know are simple enough for the masses to repeat. You know what I'm saying? But not too in depth to where these people can make these decisions on their own. They would have to go back to their reference point or their reference source, which would be the individual who they consider to be not their leader, but that's the position that they ultimately take because the people who are following them can't think for themselves, right? And then so in order to distract people from them really being a critical thinker, they immerse themselves in conflict. And that's where you'll notice if you go back a year or two, I'm assuming I don't even have to. I just notice just from the type of person he presents himself as, that I guarantee you 2 or 3 years of Taharka's content has something to do with somebody else. And I don't even watch his stuff.
Yes.
And I can guarantee that's probably what it is.
Yes. Yes.
And that's easy
exactly
work.
what it is. Yes.
that's
exactly what it is. He'll attack somebody for a few months at a time, and then in this next group, and then this next group, and that's what he does. And now he's getting his card pulled, and now he's losing his mind. Is what it is. It's obviously an agenda, and I don't even like using words like agent loosely because I think it's overused. But there's something to it, and maybe not agent, but an asset of Blancos, as you would say.
Right, but you don't have to be. And mind you, don't mean to interrupt 1,000 pardons. You don't necessarily have to be an agent to display agent-like behavior.
Exactly.
Because once the mind is taken, it's just like Candace Owens. She can literally be working for the Blancos or not, but her mind is taken, so it doesn't matter if she's working for them or not.
The effect is the same. Right, and the effect is the same, right? So it don't matter if they're getting a check or not. The effect's the same. But at least in these days and times, we could point this out in real time. We couldn't do that before. We didn't have the technology to do it. We didn't have the knowledge of these programs that were put in place to undermine us before. You know what I mean? Yeah. So now we have the ability to do these kind of things in real time. And I think that is something that we have to do for the legacy, because if not, like, think about any like little movements that we've had in the past. And 30, 40 years later, like right now, there's people that's telling us that they was down with Malcolm X back in the day. And we can't say that they wasn't. They could have been on some Taharka Bay shit back then. But now they could tell us that they was down with the movement and try to solidify themselves in some type of legacy of, you know, being progressive and with our people. Well, now what we could do is make sure that these cats that are trying to portray that image, when it's said and done 50 years from now, people can look at both sides of it and be like, oh, okay, before we make him a hero, no, we can see that this dude was on some bullshit. So that's something that we have to do, or our history will be rewritten and the narrative will be something that it shouldn't be, which will give a misdirection to the future generations of what way to go and who was part of that, you know, saying legacy of building this progression of fighting and making, you know, progress within our
because bro, let me tell you something. We have a hard time now even convincing our children, but most of them, that what we perceive or what they call racism even exists. You see, because it hides itself through policy and hides itself in policy in a way that you know, these Blancos get down in their business. And for instance, like we take a look at what's going on over there, you know, what happened in my state in Flint, and still happening to this day, right? The water crisis. Now, a lot of people didn't understand that, you know, with the water crisis, it wasn't just lead, it was a bacteria that they put in there, a flesh-eating bacteria, okay? Because they knew with lead, because see, just a little background. I mean, I'm also pursuing my undergraduate degree, which is a bachelor's degree, obviously, but you know, in political science and in the health sciences. So I love chemistry. That's the stem of my book. Like I said, The Untold Story of the Carbon Baby. My book was intended to inform our people about how important chemistry is, because chemistry is based off of carbon. Carbon is only Latin for coal, and coal is a big part of your melanin. Now, they knew in chemistry that our skin absorbs lead 600% more than they do. This is deep stuff. So when we take a look, I was expressing this to this one brother. He got an argument. He's like, oh man, it ain't got nothing to do with it. I said, man, the fact that they make their bullets out of lead, the fact that it was all in the paint in these housing complexes, and you sit there and say it has no significance, and they know they've done the research. You can go online right now and look at lead absorption. And they do studies on this now. Okay, so this is a concern. So you got to look at, when you look at how they go through doing their thing at the basic, at the most fundamental level, then you have to ask yourself, what position am I in? Is this viable? Like we talked about reparations and all this, when they literally see me as the enemy. So let's take a look at this point. Like I said, not to belabor it, but let's just say, okay, well, they give us the money. Now this money allows us to what? You know, build channels or to build and strengthen channels with our brothers and sisters, create networks, create organizations and institutions that'll help us to rebuild the Black family. Okay, they don't want that or desire that. Why? Because then that means that we're having more babies. that we're stronger, right? And we become a formidable opponent in the future. Their population is declining. And remember what we talked about with the laws of nature, self-preservation and preservation of the species. This goes against law. And if you know one thing about the Blanco, he loves his laws, even nature when it applies to him or helps to bolster anything that he's doing. Okay, so we have to take a war stance in this regard when we understand that. But the only way we're going to understand that is if we understand the fundamentals. Just like a lot of people want to shoot like Steph Curry, but don't like layups. Right. We got to get back to the easy scores. You see what I'm saying with our people and understanding that fundamentally speaking, they are diametrically opposed to our existence. And that's deep. That's a little bit too deep for us to really, you know what I'm saying, grasp, because we keep thinking that we can negotiate with these people, that they can give us money, that we can coexist with them. I'm personally with the belief that I don't think that we can do that. And I'm gonna just put it out there. Not to say that we ain't talking about the few, because if it had to deal with the few that people keep talking about, the few good white people, they don't run the world. So we're not talking about them. You know what I'm saying? So we're talking about the people who are in power, right, in the position and the ideological stance that they take. And theirs is that we can't allow you to be fruitful and to multiply and to organize. We can't allow that. Everything in their arsenal, which is displayed through the mass media, shows us that this is the position that they're taking. And we want to continue to keep negotiating with that. Oh, maybe if we do this, maybe. No. Do you know, I don't know if a lot of people know this, and I'm going to digress after this. Do you know that there is no African country on the African continent that has nuclear capabilities? None of them have any nuclear weapons. Right. The only one who did was South Africa, and that was taken after they made Nelson Mandela president.
Of course.
So they like, how can you, remember, on the geopolitical stage, nuclear deterrence is how nations beat with another. Oh, you got nuclear weapons, I got nuclear weapons, so we just gonna chill out. But
hold up, I believe Libya did for a minute, and once they got rid of them, that's when they went and got Gaddafi.
Right, but no long range, not enough to hurt nobody. You would have to actually go to war in Libya. They didn't have intercontinental ballistic capability.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
So that just goes back to what I said. They don't deal with intentions; they deal with capabilities. So they don't even want those capabilities to be there. It's just like Iran. They don't really have anything to fear from Iran. Iran hasn't attacked countries for thousands of years, probably. But just the capability to have those things is already the threat. Just the capabilities.
But then too, let's go a little bit deeper. We know that these are what they call geopolitical constructs. The Middle East was something that the Blanco concocted. It didn't. Was, you know what I'm saying? That's Northeast Africa. All right, let's stop playing. And so the problem has been, just like when we take a look at China, when China's on the world stage right now. Now, China's history, just to kind of go over it very quickly, was that they had to open up their borders. They was forced to open up their borders after the Opium Wars. Britain conducted some Opium Wars, 1839 to 1842. The second one was from 1856 to 1860. All right. They forced China to open up their borders. Now, China, they did a 99-year lease on Hong Kong and Shanghai and other provinces. Yeah. They controlled China for 99 years, from 1898 to 1997. Okay. This is deep stuff, right? So who really has power? You know, when the Europeans or the Blancos leave a country, they ain't never really left. So if I ran you for 99 years, who really is China?
Yeah, and hence why they try to combat that. Hence why they try to combat that. Well, hence why they try to combat that with the Boxer Rebellion, where they try to get any cultural influences out the way, right?
And who participated in the Boxers Rebellion? France, Germany, Japan, all of them came, right? Okay, so this, and then it was headed by a German general, the Boxers Rebellion. So this is what I say all the time, bro. We got to do our due diligence in terms of understanding what position they take on the global scale. We're gonna need all the help that we can get. Yeah, like you said, we need to isolate it and figure out those who've been adversely affected here on this so-called, continental United States. But we also have to understand that after doing so, we need to quickly put together an organization that can merge ourselves within the diaspora so that we can put forth a collective effort for liberation. If we can't do that, then everything is, we might as well pack it up, because after a while you get so used to being divisive, so used to being tribal, it bleeds into everything else that you do. You're going to have to relieve yourself of that. You're going to have to attach this dualistic nature, if at all possible, to where you already understand, like, yep, I'm fighting for my brothers and sisters here, but at the same time, I got to be ready to click and turn that switch, flip that switch off into a collective frontal assault.
Right. And before we could even do that, we have to purge the viruses out the system. Right. But I agree with that. But we do have to purge the viruses out the system so that now we can operate this organ collectively makes a body. Right. But if this organ has failure because it's attacking itself or being compromised by external forces, it's not going to be able to operate for the body in the first place. And I think that's where we're at. And another thing is like I deal with cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. So I'm familiar with what we call decentralization, meaning there's no one single point of authority or failure. And I think that is where we're starting to evolve in our endeavors these days, meaning that we don't need if there's a leader, one person who controls everything, they could just neutralize that leader, the organization and the body folds. But what we're talking about here, like, you're into chemistry. So in your mind, what you've studied and what your passion led you to is to study the field of chemistry and being able to adopt those principles and that knowledge and those practical, applicable teachings in a way that could benefit us in a way that you know how to do. Right? Everybody don't have to do the same thing. This is a multifaceted type of warfare. It involves economics, politics, it involves militarization, it involves science, it involves media, being able to control narratives. It involves all of that. So get in where you fit in. And this is what I'm saying, not to you, because you already understand that. I'm saying this to those who are listening. Contribute in the way that you know how to contribute. Put forth your energy, your efforts based on your talents and your passions and your skill set. It's not about expecting someone else to do everything. I'm a big disbeliever. I do not support the idea that just because I don't like this person or what they're doing, or I don't agree with, or I think there's something else that could be done, I'm not going to shit on them if they're operating from sincerity, and especially if they're actually getting some things done. If I think there's something that's missing in this movement, then let me fill that void if I can.
Exactly.
If there's something that needs to be added on to that I feel like I could add on to, let me do that. Because at the end of the day, we're dealing with an objective, not a methodology. The objective is we're trying to get there. If you go this route, because that's the route you know to take, but we're still heading in the same general direction.
Yeah, because they've made us a monolith. Black people do one thing, that's what all black people do, right? And stereotypes or societal constructs can serve you well in certain instances, and it obviously can be a detriment to you in others. And like you mentioned too, and I think that this is very important, the point that you just made, never let nobody marginalize the effort that you put forth. We see a lot of brothers who do that. Oh, look how big I am, you just like a fly to me. But then on their platform, they're like, each one teach one, each one do. Shut the fuck up, man. I hate that. That's these big hypocrites. That's why I say these are cons. That's why they call it the conscious community, because they'll sit up there and tell you what you have to do. Like someone to sit up there and say, well, what have you done or what are you doing? I got a son, I got a family. So I got to make sure that a lot of my energy goes on to me investing what I know and what I do into him and into my community, because we got a big footprint. Our carbon footprint is huge in this community in KZoo. Don't let them marginalize that fact. Just being the family. That is an asset. That's what they asking for. Let's not pretend that we can marginalize just that right there. That is part of the movement. That's the very thing that we're complaining about.
That's the foundation of it. Yeah.
And so like I said before, we see all of that, and then like you talked about earlier, how someone could have the audacity to make the comment and say, well, you have a smaller platform, so I'm not going to even pay attention to you. Well, why did you respond in the first place? So it's just people being disingenuous, see-through, right. and nobody got time for all of that. So in my opinion, like you just stated, I think that it is, it's incredulous for an individual to station themselves as someone who says, yeah, I'm against this person, that person, not understanding how learning works. So even if someone's a follower of Tariq Nasheed or Dr. Umar, whoever the case may be, doesn't mean that that's who they're going to follow or who they're going to be listening to 6 months from now, a year from now. They might grow out of it, or they may stay in tune with it. Who knows? It may not be for them years later. They may acquire enough knowledge, but it's a process.
Or they might take the information that they get and then implement it in a way that they can better. That they whole other level. Come on, right? And that's the thing. And this is why, like, I don't follow personalities or people because I don't even follow, but I'm saying, like, I don't even tap into people based on I like their personality. So now anything they say is a go. No, they're going to say some things that I don't agree with too. But in the general principle is what I'm more concerned with. What is the principle? Not the rhetoric. What are the principles? What are you saying that's applicable, that makes sense? I don't have to agree with everything they're saying, but I do agree that this needs to be done. And if I think it could be done a different way, a better way, I can add on my own. But I can take the good from any of it and spit the bones out and use what I can use. And if that same person, I never put myself in a position where if that same person who I'm listening to, who I'm picking up game from, they might say something goofy that I don't agree with. You know what I'm saying? Just because, so a lot of people, what they do is they worship personalities to where no matter what this person says, they're rocking with it. Those are people who need leaders. Those are people who need to be coddled. Those are sheep. Those, you know what I'm saying? They'll follow somebody anywhere, no matter what. Because I love Taharka Bey, I'm going to pretend that Y under sex offender doesn't mean what it really says. Right. Because they can't critically think and analyze and be analytical and critically think and break down things and look at it from both angles and make a logical decision. But that's not how men operate. That's why I call them bitch niggas. Right. Because men don't operate like that. Let's keep it real. We operate with logic. We operate with what's applicable, with what we could do.
Yeah, because things challenge you. Like you said, that transcend. Maybe a lot of the things that we see, being a problem transcend even race and all of that. Because like, take a look at what happened in Palestine, Ohio. Now they're complaining to this rail company saying, "Look, get us out of here. We're falling sick. We're sick. What give us the money to get up out of here." Now, the thing is like we said, in an emergency situation, because it was interesting, I didn't have the time to go to our last meeting for the Black Fatherhood Network, but we talked about emergency preparedness. At least having 2 weeks of emergency food supplies, a generator available, water available. We actually have a paper which was given from, it's called, I believe it's called the Free Water System, which you can order it along with some other essential books that I think should be in your library. But it costs like about $75 worth of materials that you can get at like Home Depot, and it'll basically act as a dehumidifier where it extracts and draws water from the air, but it filters it. So and it can give you about 10 gallons of water an hour. Okay. So because these Blancos know, just like it was a black dude by the name of Moses who came to Flint, he brought this big, huge water machine there and was drawing hundreds of thousands of gallons of fresh water and clean water for the residents of Flint. They sabotaged his machines. You see, because their system prides itself off of breeding this idea that there isn't enough of anything. And we know it's always water in the air. You can draw water out of the air.
You know what? In Mali, they made these pyramids that did the same thing. Turned desert air into water. This was like hundreds of years ago. This was like in the 1300s or something like that.
Yeah, because the Blanco would tell you in science, what is it called? It's called humidity.
Right.
See, he has the powerful weapon called nomenclature. He'll name it something else and it throws us completely the hell off. Right? He'll take sand, make a microchip and call it Silicon Valley. Because in chemistry, sand is called silicon dioxide. That's why it's called Silicon Valley. But it's sand. And we, like I mentioned this in my book, I talk about how we go on these sands, on these beaches, we twiddling our toes in the sand, and we don't realize that the Blanco's taking this very sand and making a microchip. See, he gives us this idea that this is outworldly technology. All this comes from Mother Earth. Right. And in order for us to understand, because we're not, even if, like we said, we get reparations, we're not going to be able to operate on the same accord as the European. He has articulated this era as the sixth wave of extinction. Trees are dying. The fish are dying. Animals, 300 animals are going extinct every day under his watch. So what are we going to do with what we get? We're going to have to repair Mother Earth. We can't just live here and it's toxic.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So look at the measures that we're going to have to take as we upend or we dethrone the rulership of these toxic Europeans.
Well, look, man, we have engineers, we have scientists, we have agriculturists, we have what we need.
Oh yeah.
It maybe not organized collectively, maybe not organized collectively and cohesively at this point as it should be. And maybe some catalyst will make us have to snap into that at some point when the time comes. I believe that's the case. I believe if that's the case, it will happen because we have proven that we will survive for millions of years already. So we ain't going nowhere. You know what I'm saying? But speaking of extinction, yeah, there is a group of people, those Blancos, no matter what country you name, they have a negative birth rate. No species have ever been able to recover from the birth rate they're currently at. That's just a fact. So we gonna have to learn. We're gonna have to learn to get along and do our thing at some point. Yeah, and I think the point is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the only thing that I think that I've been saying. Like we said, in closing, I don't know how much longer we have, but I was saying,
we're gonna close it out.
That I want people to take from this is that reparations means to repair. So it's just not, when we look at all of these things, is we have to be mindful of the fact that it's a mind and body thing. It's physical and immaterial. It's a combination of both. We're going to have to find that balance, and we're going to also have to encourage ourselves and inspire ourselves to be excited about collectivism. If we don't, then we might as well give it all up, because the system is exactly what we call it, a system. It's just not us a part of the system. It's global. The internet and all that made this global. This is a global economy now. In order for people to survive, and if you produce something and if you desire for it to be distributed, you have to understand that you're going to be working or networking on a global level, more than likely. That's just how things are. So if we're doing that economically, how in the hell have we not merged that in with our philosophical stance? That's just beyond me. So, like I said, with that being said,
hey, listen, I appreciate you pulling up. I think this conversation demonstrated, because we were more at odds to start, is what actually initiated this conversation. But once we actually were able to speak as men and share these different ideas, we realized we're really more on the same page than anything else. Right. And I think that's a real good demonstration for those who, because there's a difference between trolls and people who are sincere and really actually have some type of education or some type of integrity about what they're speaking about or what their intentions are. If you were trolling, we couldn't have had this conversation. If you were purely trolling, like I troll sometimes, we all do sometimes. But if it was all about trolling and just disrespect, we would have never been able to have this conversation to even see that we're more in line with our thinking. And listen, you impressed me. Not that I underestimated you, but yeah, this conversation was way better than I expected it to be. You know what I'm saying? So I salute you for that. And I salute everybody who pulled up, even if you're saying some goofy shit like Rock Official, who wants to keep on questioning if we are immigrants or not. But I think better than that. And if you don't, then you probably shouldn't be in this conversation, because you just don't have the intuition enough. And you're making it a point to where you're not saying anything about what we're talking about. So you're not even really adding on to the conversation. That's cool though. You're helping the algorithms. I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Nina, everybody else. Make sure you hit that like button. Shout out your channel real quick, man. Let me go to your channel so they can see it.
Yeah, shout out to go to Heru Hainus 7775. So that's HeruHainus 7775.
Yeah, that's what the channel looks like right there. And yeah, man, brother, we could definitely have another build at some point. I'm all for it, man. Like I said, I appreciate you pulling up, man. Much continued success in your educational endeavors and whatever you decide to do with it, and building your channel and all that good stuff, man. I wish you the best, brother. I appreciate you.
All right, you too, Soldier. Appreciate it, Jay Dizzle.
Yes, sir. Peace.
Peace.